and full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, indeed, Full Course Yellow is deployed. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Full Course Yellow in Pit Lane's regular Tuesday night get-together, where we talk about all things motorsport, well, at least as much as we can cram in to about an hour or so of mindless and totally unscripted chat with very little preparation. Although we have done some preparation tonight. We have graphics. Yes, we have graphics. You're going to see them very soon. We've been working our fingers to the bone. We've had all of the minions out, and they've been getting the graphics ready for us. So that's coming up in just a moment. But to talk about the wonderful world of motorsport and all of the things there. We've got it's a small panel tonight, but it's quality. It's all quality. Joining us, we've got Peter Johnson and we've got Mark Jones. G'day guys, how are we? Everybody's very quiet at the moment.
I didn't unmute.
There we go.
Peter, you fantastic.
Yep. There we go. So okay, Pete and Mark are both unmuted. So yeah, a big weekend of motorsport. We had Supercars were back at WANNAROO in Western Australia for the latest round of the Supercars after quite a break. We also had the Winter Nationals up in Queensland, the drag racing, which was fantastic. We've got the test day for the Le Mans 24-hour, and we'll be giving you a preview of the Le Mans 24-hour a little bit later on. It's sort of, to me this is Christmas. I mean, in terms of everyone gets all excited about the Bathurst 1000 or the Australian Grand Prix or the Grand Final or the Boxing Day. Well, I get excited for the Boxing Day test, but I get more excited for the Le Mans 24-hour race, and really looking forward to that this weekend, and we'll have a bit of a preview of that coming up. But I suppose let's start with the Supercars in Western Australia, where we saw Ryan Wood break through for his first victory in the series, the young New Zealand driver. So the faith that has been shown to him by Walkinshaw Andretti United certainly paid off. He was very unfortunate to miss out on the second race after he had a rear suspension failure, and that gave that win to Brock Feeney, who also went on to win the longer race on Sunday. And well, Pete, let's start with you. I take it you watched it on the weekend. What did you think of all three races?
I didn't think the racing was that exciting. I thought the main point of interest for me was it doesn't strike me as a track that tests reliability, but there are a few cars, especially in the Sunday race, had reliability issues, and like you had Di Pasquale with the alternator, and the same thing with somebody else. I can't remember whose name escapes me now. And also the engine seizing up on Cooper Murray's car. So that was the main interest for me. And what was also refreshing for me was Ryan Wood, a bit of personality came out, and he was very honest. At the end of the race, he said, "No, I'm not happy with James Golding because he ruined other people's races, and he should have got a penalty before mine." And he basically pulled no punches. But then when he won, or when he got the pole, he said a hello to everybody, his parents and his girlfriend and everybody, and said, "I feel like a mini Craig Lowndes, or Craig Lowndes Jr." So his personality was coming out, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, I don't think we've spoken to Ryan. He sort of came in towards the end, basically at the time when it became almost impossible for us to get hold of Supercar. But we didn't do anything with Andretti United, because Andretti United to this day remain the only Supercar team who steadfastly refuse acknowledge our existence. I mean, I've been trying for years to get onto their media mailing list or to talk to their media person, and every time I ring them, it's like, I'm sorry, we can't give out that information to the public. Oh, I'm not the public, because we're in the media. Oh, that's community television station. No, sorry, no, it's only professional media, and they hang up on you. So so basically that's. We don't get so we get nothing. So we haven't had anybody from Walkinshaw Andretti United on basically for for the whole pretty much the whole time they've owned the team. I think we fluked onto Chaz at one stage, just because we caught up with him in the paddock and we sort of ambushed him. But apart from that, we haven't had anybody at all.
What did annoy me, and it annoys me in New Zealand too, where Mark Scaife, Ryan Wood was on the pole, and the driver next to him, who I can't remember who it was, and Mark Scaife was going, oh, Australia versus New Zealand. No, they are New Zealand drivers. They are from New Zealand, but they're over here racing in Australia, and they reside in Australia, and it's the same thing that happens with New Zealand. If a New Zealand native wins the race, it's a Kiwi that's won the race. And I think what would be a good thing is if they're going to have a double header in Perth and the double header in New Zealand, maybe have like a test series where you run it like the old Gold Coast used to run, where you have a whole lot of New Zealand drivers do one race on a Saturday, and Australian drivers do a race on a Sunday.
Yeah, I don't think they'd let anybody do it. But I like the idea of having a Trans-Tasman trophy. Whereas I don't know how because obviously you've got different numbers. But if they sort of set them up as teams also and said, okay, let's take the 5 fastest New Zealand drivers because there's enough there to do it, and then pick almost a test team of the 5 drivers that you want representing Australia, and have sort of over say 3 races, say the Grand Prix and then the 2 New Zealand races, have like a Trans-Tasman test series for the for the McLaren Brabham Cup or something like that. That might be get a bit of extra interest in
sports sedans used to do that, and so did the trucks.
Yeah, because I remember like sports sedans. They were the days when you had people, who actually, promoters who promoted, like Bob Jane out at Calder would always have, you'd have either Victoria versus New South Wales or Australia versus New Zealand or something like that, and they were always, they really hyped them up, and they got huge crowds. That's where I first saw people like Jim Richards and Rod Coppins and Leo Lennon and those sort of people, because they'd come over for that one race or a series of races at either Calder or then Oran Park. It was very exciting to see these different cars and different drivers, and they were more than competitive. So it would be it's just another way of adding a bit of interest, a bit of hype to the event, and have a little series within a series. They've sort of got that now with sort of a sprint series and an endurance series, and then the finals. So why not have a Trans-Tasman trophy series, say to kick off the opening few rounds?
I think they did a specifically Holden versus Ford challenge at the Grand Prix one year, when the Grand Prix was still a non-championship round. They gridded the field up with Holdens on one side of the grid and Fords on the other, based on their qualifying.
Yeah, well, Bob Jane used to do that stuff all the time, and it was, as I said, it was hugely popular. If you have a look at the, photos, this was in sports sedans. If you have a look at photos from the time, the terraces around Calder Park were absolutely stacked, and I think it was Alan Horsley did that up at Oran Park, and they had massive crowds as well. I remember the New South Wales Victoria Sports Sedan challenges, where you had the Grace Brothers team would come down from New South Wales, and it was a big deal because you'd look at Racing Car News and Auto Action and that sort of thing, and you'd often see the Grace Brothers team, and they used to spend obviously an enormous amount in their motor racing because they had cars in almost every damn category. They had Formula Fords, Formula Twos, Formula Threes, plus lots of sports sedans. They had Bruce Kerry's V8 Capri and Bill Brown's Porsche and Pete
And some
Gagan's
people called
Falcon.
Gagan, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, and it was a really big deal when they came down here, and they took on sort of a team of the dream team of Moffat, Jane, and Brock, and McEwen. It was.
It was
It was a really big deal, and we don't see things like that anymore. Sandown used to do it all the time as well. It was like for meetings where for smaller meetings where you didn't have sort of the touring cars or the Formula 5000s, they would basically find an excuse to at least put a few on by having a Ford versus Holden for Ford versus Holden grudge race series where you'd have the Holden dealer team versus the Ford team and the or the New South Wales versus Victoria or something like that. So they used to do that stuff, but they don't do it anymore. It's all very dreary nowadays.
and it was good to see James Courtney and Blanchard get a podium. The Blanchard team get a podium.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could tell
Not
how
a
much
dry
it
eye
meant.
in the house kind of thing. It was the proper feel good story. The retiring champion and the little team that could. And I mean, it all came about for with a bit of good luck with the safety car late in the race. But by the same token, Courtney wasn't on the podium when
Got to
all that
be,
sorted out, so he still had to fight his way onto the podium.
and you've got to be in the right place at the right time to do it. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it showed how much it meant to him. I mean, by the fact that he was so emotional, because I mean, he's been around for a while. He's had his share of wins over the years. Obviously, it's been a while now, and yeah, I mean, God knows how emotional and how thrilled the team would have been had he got up and won. But yeah, I mean, it's good for the Blanchard team because they've been soldiering on for a long time now, and they've they've
the
never
third
really had the.
generation of racers now in the Blanchard family, like Tim and John, and I don't recall John's father's name.
Oh yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
on the tip of my tongue.
uh, but yeah, it's fantastic to see these results that happen from time to time. A little feel good story, and
And the Blanchard
yeah,
family have been huge supporters of not
oh
just
yeah,
their own team, but motor racing in general, and particularly down here in Victoria. Lots of state rounds, particularly Formula Ford, and like things at the like Island Magic and that sort of thing. The Blanchard family, there was always Cool Drive or always something with the Blanchard family supporting those particular categories, Formula Ford and occasionally Formula V. So they were always out there and raced for ages in Formula. John raced for ages in Formula Ford. Once and then obviously
he went away and came back again, and
yeah.
and kicked on again. He came up in a particularly interesting class of Formula Ford races in the sort of 88, 89, 90, 91, and that included guys like Paul Morris, included Russell Ingall and Mark Larkham, and who else was in that class? Brett Peters, who raced supercars for a while and became a two-time GT production car champion in Subarus, and these days runs the multi spares team that has that runs in touring car masters, and recently acquired and bashed a GT4 Mustang in the monochrome GT4 series. They've also got some Ute series, and there was there was. There's a name just trickling through on the back of my head. Oh, yeah, Troy Dunstan, you might remember. Was it in that class as well? It was
When you look back at it, I mean, I look back at the sort of the Victorian Formula Ford champions, the state level, and when we used to cover when we used to actually cover the races in the Victorian Formula Ford Championship, if you look back at the old footage now, I mean, there were rounds that it was like, Will Davison, Will Power ran a number of Victorian rounds. You had once again Mark Larkham and Mark Winterbottom, and you could go right through, like a whole. It really was what turned out to be a who's who of local motorsport, and I
yeah,
suppose we're still, I
the
still,
the
suppose
two
we're still
wheels
seeing that.
were kicking a lot of goals, and Will Power won the uh, I think he won Formula Holden and was second in Formula 3, or the other way around in the same year. And that was his last year in Australia before he left to Europe. And both the wheels got a Minardi test
Yes.
in the year after that.
Yes, so they were they had some fantastic races. I remember one particular round at Calder, which was insane. It was just because I remember, because it was the obvious, it was the sub editor's dream, in terms of, because I think from memory I might have even written the story for Auto Action, but the headline, of course, just had to be Battle of the Wills, and that was.
Well, I think
That
Leanne
was
Ferrier would have been in that race as well, I imagine, that sort of era. Um,
she was around. I think she was a little later, and
well,
because I
she was
remember her.
racing in Formula Ford against one of the Davisons.
Yes, I think that was
So that
probably
had
a
to be
year or
Will.
so
Alex is
after.
older
Yeah,
and all, so yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So and she was very successful. Unfortunately, she's not racing anymore. Because she was a very very capable racer, and when they were talking about all of the, trying to promote more young women racers, it was like, they've got one sitting there at the moment who's not sort of, doesn't have a drive, and yet is very very capable. I sort of remember a race at Island Magic in improved production with her and Ben Schutz and Ray Hislop. I
that's
think it
right.
was Ray Hislop or Tony. I've forgotten his name now.
Ordino?
No, no,
D'Alberto?
Italian. No, another Italian name. But it left me at the moment. Raced Formula 5000 briefly as well, in historic racing. But because I remember I wrote the story on that as well. And also we covered it with, and it was one of the best races that I've ever seen, because the V8 had just blasted away on the straights, and then by the time I was filming it, as they were coming off of MG, and by the time they'd got down to MG, the two Mazdas were back in front again, and then the Falcon the Commodore would just blast past into the distance. And Ray Hislop, there was another race with Leanne and Ray Hislop as well in the Falcon. So she was very very competitive in improved production in that RX-7.
Yeah, that was her father, Mark Ferrier's car. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was very quick car, and she loved Phillip Island. She always did very well there. She won the Formula Ford race down
And
there,
Formula 3.
then Formula 3 down there, and she always, in fact, I remember talking to her after the Formula 3 race, and she said, I don't know, she said, I just feel comfortable here. And I say that, shows that her capacity and her bravery to say, I just feel comfortable at probably the second most challenging race circuit in.
Yeah, it's a magnificent place, Phillip Island,
Australia.
and we've lost the boss. Ah.
That's good.
Well, I guess the other and we should probably make a start on it. We're 20 minutes into the show, and Brett is going to be a little kicking himself that he's not here for the start of this. But we should make mention of that this weekend coming. In fact, starting on Wednesday. Oh, hang on, tomorrow is the FIA World Endurance Championship is back in action on the little town outside of, it's actually a bit further away from Paris than you might expect. But yeah, the little town of Le Mans, and the second largest, I want to say second largest racetrack in Europe, uh, second only to the Nürburgring. And a race that's 103 years old now. I think 1922 was the first one. And Oh my goodness, we have such a mouth-watering array of cars heading into the into the 2025 edition. There's 19 hypercars, which is actually, I think, slightly down on last year because, of course, we're missing the Lamborghinis, uh, who've they've put their cars to one side, and we're also missing the team Chip Ganassi, who used to run the Cadillac squad. Now Jota, who were a Porsche team, now run the Cadillac team. So there's a couple of cars missing there, and we've added a couple of we've added the Aston Martins to that. So um, it's a fantastic looking field, and it the level of talent uh, in the in the entry list for the Le Mans 24 hour just goes on and on.
It's incredible when you have a look. I'm back. I just dropped out briefly. As I was saying before the show, I've had all sorts of problems with internet connections and the computer all day, and it just dropped out for a second. So when you switched over to the Le Mans stuff, we'll get back onto the Formula One calendar in a moment. I was going to do that first, but seeing you brought that up, let's have a look at, as you say, like the number of cars that we've got for the Le Mans 24 hour this year is just unbelievable. And we've got the spotters guide which they've put out, which sort of shows some of the cars there. We had the test day on Sunday. Probably didn't tell us much. I mean, the test day is always interesting from the fact that they're always very keen to not show their hand. But unfortunately, I really expected the two cars, certainly the best sounding cars, along with the Cadillacs. But I think they've got the wood on the Cadillacs. The two Aston Martins, the 007 and 009 cars. There's lots of footage on YouTube at the moment of them coming down Mulsanne Straight, revving out with that wonderful V12 engine, and it was just sounds spectacular. So they'll be one to look at. But I thought they might have been a little bit more competitive. But the interesting thing was
they're not the slowest.
They're not the slowest. No. And everybody's still really close. I mean, and it'd be interesting to see if there's any tweaks to balance the performance. The interesting thing was that having not been all that competitive, although they did better at the last round, but after dominating for so long, Toyota have had a pretty lean run just lately. But at the end of the day on the weekend, at the end of the Sunday race, Kamui Kobayashi and the Toyota team were on the fastest for the weekend. So the fastest for the Sunday. So the Toyotas are back in action.
And backing that up, Brendan Hartley set the fastest time during the course of the test session as well. So the Toyotas have come up the order a little bit after Ferrari have been kicking all the goals in the start of the World Endurance Championship.
Yeah, so that's cars sort of 7 and 8, and they've got the livery. They've got really good livery. They've got the tribute livery on. So and then you say the two Ferraris, or I think there's more than that. There's the factory Ferraris. There's the AF Corsa car as well. So they've all done very well. Robert Kubica was very, very quick in the Ferrari.
So third fastest. James Collado, second fastest. Mick Schumacher was fourth fastest in the Alpine, ahead of Kevin Estre.
Yeah, because a lot of people were sort of saying that it was a bit. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring.
Well, it was fantastic to have at least one of the French manufacturers up at the front of the order, considering where the other French manufacturer was. We said before the Aston Martins did beat somebody. Who they beat was Peugeot. And
which is a shame. Once again, I thought the Peugeots would be very quick there. I mean, they were certainly did very well last year in that old configuration. But I think in finding some downforce, it's probably affected their the straight line speed on the on the Long Mulsanne Straight. But that was really good. We've also got LMP2 back again, which is fabulous news. And it's interesting. They've slowed the LMP2s down quite a bit from the European Le Mans specifications, because they didn't really want that situation that they found last year and the year before, where the very fastest of the LMP2 cars were actually running in the top 10 and embarrassing some of the hypercars. So they've slowed them down a little bit, but it's also to make it easier because we've got so many hypercars. They want to make sure that there's no it's easier for them to pass over that period of
Interesting
time.
name at the top of the LMP2s. Famous motor racing name, Fittipaldi. Pietro Fittipaldi was the fastest last weekend in one of the United Autosports LMP2 Orecas, ahead of Matthias Besch, Louis Delatraz, who's another famous family name in motorsport, Delatraz. Tom Dillman and Antonio Felix da Costa was fifth fastest, the former Formula E world champion.
Yes, and when we've got the GT3 cars as well, I'm just trying to pick up my third page here. There we are. Yeah, so
and that was fascinating all of its own. Well, there was actually mirrored the hypercars to a slight extent, because it was Toyota and Ferrari who were the fastest in the hypercars, and that was borne out in the GT3s as well, because it was Jose Maria Lopez in the Lexus who was fastest amongst the GT3s ahead of Alessio Rivera. And then and they backed it up, because Akotis ASP, the Lexus team, are bringing 3 cars this weekend, and they were first, third, and fifth. And you remember,
that, of course,
like 12 months ago, the
Lexus
were nowhere.
Well, that's it. They're far and away the oldest of the GT3 cars, and they've been very competitive in IMSA, in the North American Sports Car Championship. But not so much in the WEC. But they looks like they're going to be very competitive so far in the for Le Mans. Now they have, and then unfortunately, some of the sad news from the weekend for the weekend was Michelle Gatting from the Iron Dames team, who had a freak accident during a pit stop and managed to break her foot. And they've called in Sarah Bovey, and I don't know if you've seen it online yet. It's worth watching, but it is sort of very emotional, where Michelle has actually phoned. They've got footage of Michelle phoning Sarah and saying, "Hey, what are you doing on the weekend? Do you want to race at Le Mans?
Come drive my car."
And Sarah going, yeah, don't rub it in, sort of thing, and just going, "No, I'm serious. Do you want to come on?" And it's like, "Oh mate, what's wrong?" And she told her, and she went, "Oh no." And so she's turned up, and they've made quite light of it. But then at some stage, you can see Michelle really just breaks down, and the two of them just it's very emotional, because obviously she's built herself up for the biggest race in the world, and then this freak accident happened. Yeah. It's like a couple of years ago. I forget the driver in the hypercars. Somebody who jumped off
his foot.
Jumped off the pit wall or something during practice.
No, it got run over by a car.
Oh, okay. So there was another one.
Yeah, his foot got run over, and they went on to win the. It was LMP2 driver, and they kept it quiet, and they won the race. They won the LMP2 class, but.
We've got a few Australians in over the weekend. We've got the Grove contingent, father and son. We've got Tony and Brenton Grove running in the Iron Lynx Mercedes. They had
19th, I think.
They had some dramas on the weekend. In fact, they brought out the red flag. I think that ended the second session a bit early. So, so not sure exactly what happened there, but because there wasn't, unfortunately, any television coverage or any video. The surprising thing was they were calling it from the guys from Paul Trustwell and I think it was Johnny Palmer were calling were calling it for Radio Le Mans. They were the only people who were covering it, and they said, "Oh, we don't have any cameras," which is interesting because when we were there, this is how good it is in terms of what you see there is that on the media centre, at every desk you had like a monitor for every desk, and you had a little switching unit in front, and you could just punch up the CCU cameras that were that race control see. So you anywhere in the track, it's like, oh, there's an incident at the Porsche curves. Oh, that's camera 7, and you just bring that up, and you could see, regardless of what they were showing on the broadcast, you could just basically direct your own. It was choose your own adventure. It was so spectacular and ahead of its time, but they obviously didn't have that system in operation for the test day. So, that will be in operation, of course, for the action that starts tomorrow night.
And the other Australian in the field, of course, is Yasser Shahin, who's been a central part of the LMGT3 Cup in the World Endurance Championship for the last couple of years. Porsche last year, a BMW this year, and Augusto Farfus were in Yasser Shahin's car, was 7th fastest, with one of the best of the rest after Lexus and Ferrari had locked out all the top positions in the field. There was there's one quick Porsche in Klaus Bachler and Augusto Farfus in the Bend BMW M4.
I don't know as much as you guys about it, but I saw the Grove car today, or the 3 cars in their team, and they look good. They do look good.
Yeah,
they've got the whole Silver Arrow thing going on again.
Yeah, they have. It's a good thing from the Mercedes that they've gone with that look, and as we said, the Toyotas have gone back to the old GT1 livery for their cars.
For one of them.
For one of them, and the Iron Dames Porsche that we mentioned looks fantastic. If you haven't seen the livery on that, it looks $1 million. It's a great livery, sort of like handwritten and white and pink, and just looks terrific, really good. So that kicks off tomorrow night. Now, it of course is on Stan. If you haven't subscribed to Stan, the problem with Stan Sport, of course, is you've got to get a subscription to Stan as well. It's not like KO where you can just go out and spend your $20 or $25 or whatever it is now to get KO by itself, because that's all you want. You've got to get Stan, the main channel as well. So it basically doubles the cost. But of course, you're only getting it for the 1 month. But if you're very lucky, you might be able to find a free trial somewhere. If you're there, and I was lucky enough that they sent me a free trial and said, you haven't been with us for a year, so would you like to have a look at how good we are once again? And it was like, oh yeah, for 1 month, yeah, and that will finish basically the week after Le Mans. Yeah, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll sign up to that. So I'm going to. Although unfortunately I won't be. I've sort of set up to watch it for tomorrow and Thursday, and I won't be home for either night of it. So unless I stay up and watch sort of the sessions that are running at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I won't see it. But I will at least see the race. And this year, Stan, they were also showing the lead up, the preparation, because last year they didn't show that. Last year they only basically went for the race. They started the broadcast at 11 o'clock our time, so basically just for the 1 hour. But this year they're showing all the pomp and circumstances, all the build up. If you don't have Stan, one of the ways to do it, of course, our friends at Radio Le Mans, John Hindhoff, Paul Trustwell, Nick Damon, all of the team at Radio Le Mans will cover all of the races. And also you'll find on YouTube that a lot of the teams will have live feeds of their in-car cameras that you can get absolutely free of charge. And if you sort of bring them up and basically have them sort of like on short command, you can, along with the timing, the FIA WEC timing, which is available free of charge as well. You can actually get a really good coverage, a surprisingly good coverage without the television thing, with the Radio Le Mans commentary and the YouTube in-car camera stuff.
It's like an exciting version of the SBS slow TV train videos.
Yeah,
Only,
yeah, it is.
yeah, stuff
Especially
that
at
train
night. It's
stuff. Let's have
actually a
racing
better.
cars.
It's actually a better coverage at night because there's a lot of the spots. A lot of the spots around the track are not illuminated, so you can't see a lot anyway. But of course, you get those shots of racing at Le Mans. In the middle of the night, particularly if there's a bit of weather around, but it looks like it's going to be fine for the race. The forecast so far for the race, I think, is basically fine and fair and reasonably warm, sort of in the mid to high 20s for race day, but possibly a little bit of rain tomorrow night. They had a little bit of rain in the lead up to the event. Our mate Christian Schmidt from In Pit Lane, part of our In Pit Lane family, has been is over there once again doing his bit as an official, and he's done that many times over the past few years. So he's over there once again, as is Roger Churnside, Roger the Hat, Victorian flag marshalling legend. Roger was there the first year that I went there back in 2004, and he's back there again. He's got his family with him as well. He's the extended sort of holiday. So so there's a couple of Australians behind the scene working as well. I'm sure there's a few others as well that I don't know about, but I've been reading
there's
some
a
of
few
these.
in competition as well, because of course there's a bunch of support categories running there. The Porsche Sprint Challenge has been part of the Le Mans for like forever, it seems. Ford Mustang Challenge making their debut there this weekend, and there's a couple of Aussies in
Yeah,
that
a couple
grid.
of Aussies there.
And
And
there's
that will
also
be, by the way, all of the support races will be live on YouTube. Full coverage, live on YouTube, free of charge. So it's really only the main race and the and qualifying and practice for the main race that are either behind a paywall somewhere. But
and there's
all of
also
the support races, including the Michelin Le Mans Cup, all of the support races will be seen live on their various YouTube channels. So check that out. So there's no shortage of opportunities to see stuff this weekend. Okay, we might move on very quickly. We've sort of covered that, but it's going to be a great weekend. Really looking forward to it. Might move on just a little bit, because what was announced today was the calendar for next year's Formula One Championship, and it's an interesting calendar. Once again, Melbourne is first cab off the ranks because of Ramadan again. The Middle Eastern races have been sort of delayed for a month, and it's a really interesting calendar. In fact, I think it's one of the most sensible calendars that they've ever managed to put together, because it's got some sort of logic behind it, which we haven't seen in the past. If you have a look at the calendar there, we've got sort of three sort of Asia Pacific races in Australia, China, and Japan, all sort of hooked together, and then there's sort of about a week's break, and then they move back to the Middle East for Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, then over to North America and Miami, and then up to Canada. Now the interesting thing is the Canadian race is basically swapped with Monaco. Which means that the Canadian Grand Prix will be on the same day as the Indianapolis 500, which is interesting, and it also potentially means that the Monaco Grand Prix could be on the same, the Spanish Grand Prix will be on the same weekend as Le Mans. So
they're not being that silly, are they?
Yeah, so that would be really silly, although there is a bit of a gap there is a week's gap between Monaco and Spain. So if the ACO and the FIA could be convinced to move it between those two races, that would be interesting. The other thing that
Man.
you've got with the Australian race as the opening round, it's the first weekend in March, which means it has the potential to be bloody hot because it's the hottest part of the year in Melbourne is in sort of mid-February to mid-March.
We
So
thought that this year.
yeah, well that's what we were expecting, but it wasn't quite this early. I mean, this is the first weekend. So, potentially, I think the first weekend this year, I think on the Sunday it got to about 38 or something like that. And then it was the next week when you went back that we suddenly got all the rain and things got a bit cooler again. But it was very, very hot. But this also affects.
More on the supercars than
This
the
is,
Formula
yeah,
One.
well, this is going to be the interesting thing in how it affects local events as well. Now, it's already been announced. Basically, as soon as they announced the confirmation of the dates, the Adelaide Motorsport Festival confirmed that they are still going to run the week before the Grand Prix. So, talking about hot, last weekend of February in Adelaide. Then you've got the Grand Prix. So it'll be interesting to see where Phillip Island places the Phillip Island Classic. But it might work out really well because you will have the if you've got the Phillip Island Classic, then the week after, then you can basically if you're coming out here and you want to make a real event of it, you've got the choice of saying, okay, I'll arrive a week earlier and go to see Adelaide and then go to the Grand Prix, or I'll come to see the Grand Prix, wait around a week, and then go down and take in the Phillip Island Classic.
So the Classic isn't nailed down to being the week before the Grand Prix?
Well, traditionally it always has been, but it was it's always basically been about the weekend of the Labor Day weekend, which is going to be the weekend of the Grand Prix again, which it was years ago. As Box is saying again, great to see the Grand Prix go back to the traditional rate of the Moomba long weekend. Now to get some tickets, that's probably the hard thing to do, but yeah, so that's the option that people have got. You'll have, for Victorians, you've got a long weekend for the Grand Prix. It's also, because it's a week or so, a couple of weeks earlier, it's probably not going to conflict with any AFL stuff. It's probably a week or two before the AFL kicks off. So you don't have that problem about how do we fit in sort of, stuff around the AFL so there's not a clash. And it'll be in its own sort of spot. I mean, it will of course clash with the Moomba Masters water skiing, which is a bit of a tragedy. But that's great for them because I mean, basically on the Monday, all those internationals who are here for the Grand Prix can wander down to Moomba and take in the bouncing castles and the overpriced food trucks and watch some go down onto the river and watch some world class water skiing. So
How lovely it is to swim in the river.
Yeah, as long as you don't swim in the river, trust me, don't swim in the river. I have been there. I have done that. Trust me, you don't want to swim in the river.
No, and staple your mouth shut.
Very much so. Unless you're up the other end of the Yarra, it's lovely. It's beautiful up the other end. Top end of the Yarra is gorgeous. It's absolutely. Once it goes through all the farmlands and all past all the factories and all the rest of it, and through all the inner city suburbs, then it starts getting a bit grimy. Although it's much cleaner than it used to be, and it's basically mud. I mean, this is it. It's not. The water isn't quite as filthy as people say it is in terms of what's in it. It's cleaner. It's actually clean. They found out it's much cleaner than Sydney Harbour in terms of germs and all the rest of it. So if you swim in Sydney Harbour, you can get away with swimming in the Yarra. But I wouldn't want to do either, to be honest with you. Okay, so that's going to be interesting. But then you've got to wonder how this affects supercars. For next year, because they're not going to have the Perth race up and running so much. Where are they going to run? Where are they going to run the opening round? Are they going to make the Grand Prix? I don't think they'd want the Grand Prix
As the opening round.
Because it's going to be lost in the shuffle, which means if it's either going to end up being the same weekend as the Adelaide Classic, they're going to put it the week before the Grand Prix, or they're going to put it the week before that, in which case it's probably going to bump straight into something called the Bathurst 12 hours.
12 hour, and that'll preclude we have the age old problem of V8 drivers not being in the 12 hour.
Not being in the 12 hour, and also the 12 hour being sort of overwhelmed. Now, the interesting story going around is that and I got this certainly heard sort of, talk about this at Bathurst this year, is a bit of toing and froing between Supercars and SRO in terms of the future of the Bathurst 12 hour. SRO, I think, would very much like to get full control of it. Once again, I think that they think that it might not be being promoted as well as it could be by Supercars. Perhaps they feel their heart's not in it or something. But yeah, I think that would be really really good. Now, there has been talk, of course, about making a Supercar round either the week before or the week after the Grand Prix at Albert Park. As a standalone, which, as I pointed out, and as we put up, we actually put up the relevant government act.
Yeah, it's
here
not
on
legal,
the show.
is it?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, the Grand Prix Act says basically that the track can be shut off and the event can be run for the Grand Prix for one weekend and one weekend only. So, because that was the thing that, like in amongst all the Save Albert Park nonsense, that local residents were really sort of pissed off about, was like, oh, this is going to be the thin end of the wedge. They'll run the Grand Prix here, but then later on in the year, how do we know we're not going to get the Melbourne 500 here? They move it from Sandown. And we have the Melbourne 500 as well. So they put that in and said, no, it can only be used for the Grand Prix meeting and nothing else. The rumour going round is that they might use a loophole which sort of says that, it's for the Grand Prix event. And we'll just sort of say that, well, the Grand Prix, it was sort of 3 or 4. Now it was 4 days. We set up on the Friday, so we got Wednesday as well. We'll just set up earlier and or pack up later, and it'll still be the same event, probably under the same Motorsport Australia permit. And it's like, okay,
like they did with the Bathurst 12 hour and the Supercar round last year.
Yeah, I think it was last year or the year before. Year before.
I think it was the COVID. Was it?
Yeah, so they
had
had
year?
No, I think it was.
I
think it was just
to
to do the idea of running it under the same permit of basically running a race meeting that ran for 10 days instead of 3.
Yeah, so that's.
But I don't know that I think they'll get lynched.
Yeah, it'll be very good. Make it a week long. Run Supercars the weekend before, which of course would jump on the really affect the Adelaide Motorsport Festival. But as Jared is also pointing out, it would allow them to use the Formula One pit lane as well and all the garages, or you would think that would be the case. So that sounds like a sensible thing to do.
There's an important caveat to this, and when is the next Victorian state election?
Next year.
Next year.
In that case, it won't happen.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, although they're
not going to do anything like that in an election year to muck around with like shutting down Melbourne for an additional weekend in an election year. It's not going to happen.
Especially in those inner city seats where Labor are going to be struggling big time against the Greens and some of the independents anyway, because I mean the Liberals in the inner city are basically it's not even a contest anymore. They almost don't exist. But certainly in the inner city parts of Melbourne, around places like Albert Park, there's a lot of people who are looking to vote Green, and or if they're not quite that radical, they'll vote independent. And obviously, Labor doesn't want that. Although Labor do have such a huge lead and like a huge advantage in numbers, but they're going to get monstered out in the country areas. I think they've probably acknowledged that at the moment. They are very much, I mean, they're going to get lynched. If Jacinta Allen went out to some of the country areas at the moment, she'd be lynched because they are really, really seriously angry at some of the things that are being done, particularly the emergency services tax, which is basically a tax which says, hey, you choose to live out in the bush in the middle of nowhere, and in the middle, places with that flood and have bushfires and all the rest of it. Well, you can bloody pay for it. Don't expect the people in the green leafy suburbs to look after you. You can look after yourself. So you want to live there, it'll cost you big dollars. And you weren't going to vote for us anyway, so we don't care. But so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Also, like talking about once again talking about that calendar again, just to wrap this up. As I said, it really does make
second
sense.
Spanish race.
Yeah, well, this is it. That's the street race.
Can I?
Yep.
Because that still has to get homologated. So, and if it can't, they want to leave Catalunya in there just in case.
Yeah, and I think they've probably got Imola on short notice as well, just in case it doesn't. But Carlos Sainz has run around this weekend at the side of the new Madrid street circuit. So they're getting on with it. But the interesting thing is the way they've put it all together really makes sense, because as I said, you've got the 3 Asia Pacific races, you've got 2 Middle Eastern races, then 2 North American races, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 European races. Then you've got sort of that transitional races in Azerbaijan, then over to Singapore to the United States, and then you've got Mexico in South America, Brazil in South America, back to the United States for Las Vegas, and then finish off in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. It's a much more logical way of travelling around and that's what something Supercars should have a really close look at that. It's also, you've got a lot of races happening week after week. I mean, Australia, China and Japan are all a week after each other. Then there's a gap, and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are locked together. A bit of a gap of about a week between Miami and Canada. Then another week or so for Monaco. And then Monaco, Spain and Austria are all fairly close together. We're going to have, the momentum is going to be really good, because you're going to have like races, week after week after week. So it's getting more like NASCAR in terms, and that's what Supercars have got to do.
It's exhausting, but it's good.
It's good for us, and they're professionals. They get paid, a shitload of money, so they should be able to afford it. They should be able to go out and put on that show. And I know we're not talking about the same amount of money for the supercars, but when you look at it, I mean, there's so many huge gaps in that calendar. It's hard to get any momentum coming up, because it's like, oh good, okay, the supercars are back. It's like, okay, so when's the next round? Next week? No. The week after? No. No, it'll be in about another month's time. It's like, okay.
They're proving in this period between Perth and Darwin that they can run races a fortnight apart, because Darwin is not this weekend but the weekend after.
The thing is, if they could pull it together like that, if they could just say, right, we're gonna organise it so we have a race every 2 weeks. That's going to be our schedule. Every 2 weeks there will be a race. Then you could plan. I mean, and say, okay, the first weekend and the third weekend of the month is going to be supercars. And then that the second weekend and the fourth weekend, you've got your speed series and your state series, and everything else can fit in those other two weeks. So you've got sort of some sort of decent motorsport happening every single weekend, basically between sort of February and through until the end of November, and that would make sense, and you could keep that momentum going. But right now, there's just so many there's weekends where you've got 1,001 bloody things on in the same weekend, and then you've got weekend after weekend after weekend where nothing's happening.
I have a love-hate relationship with those triple headers because it is exhausting. If your preference is to watch them live, it
Yeah.
is exhausting.
Yeah,
Well,
also,
we've got the triple header to end all triple headers coming up, starting this week with Le Mans 24 hour, and then the Nürburgring 24 hour, and then the Spa 24 hour.
just
So
imagine.
sleep is for tortoises, as Doctor Who used to say.
Just imagine what it's going to be like for just think, particularly some of those GT3 teams. I mean, for the hypercar teams, it's probably not going to. Some of the drivers will be involved in the other two races, but the teams could basically pack up and get ready for the next round. For of their series. But
I don't think there's anyone. There are any teams doing all three. There's not a lot of
WRT, are they?
crossover. There's not a lot of crossover between between the WEC and the Nürburgring. The teams that run the Nürburgring tend to be like Spa kind of balances. Like most, quite almost all of the Nürburgring GT3 teams will be at Spa, and quite a few of the World Endurance GT3 teams will be at Spa. But you won't find too many of the World Endurance GT3s at the Nürburgring. In
Yeah,
fact,
which is,
I'm not
and it
very.
hasn't
I'd
affected
say
the.
WRT possibly, but like
Well, I
WRT
think,
haven't done any of the build-up races for
yeah,
this
I
year's
think actually
Nürburgring.
WR2 were one of the teams that said, look, we can't do all three, and I think I think they've chosen to miss Nürburgring and do Spa instead. Because, but the thing is, both
Well,
of
they've
them
got
now
to do
are part
Spa
of the.
because they're running in the GT World Challenge Europe.
Oh, right, yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a wild few weekends of 24 hour races. Also, you've got all of the support races for those two events as well, and the we mentioned the sort of more historic Nürburgring. The entry list
That's
for
a
that.
gorgeous race, that one.
Well, the entry list for that has been released today, and if you have a look at that, there's all sorts of extraordinary cars running around in that. And then, of course, just after that, if that's not enough for you, I think about the weekend or the weekend after, or 2 weekends after after Spa, of course, you've got the Le Mans Classic. And last weekend we had Le Grand Prix de l'Arche d'Or down at Dijon, which wasn't the numbers that they usually get. I think because for that very reason, because normally what they have is the Le Mans Classic one year and then the Grand Prix de l'Arche d'Or the following year, so they alternate. And
I thought it was Monaco, historic Monaco they alternated with.
So yeah, so it sort of got out of sync a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, during COVID,
Yeah, because of COVID.
one of the classic Le Mans was delayed a year.
Yeah, so they ran it the following year, and they haven't. And I think that they wanted to. I think they wanted to keep it to like every second year, so they miss out. Because I've been trying to find like an excuse to get there, because it's as I've said many times before. Every time we've been to Le Mans, the thing that everybody says is you must come back for the Classic. The Classic is such an amazing. It's a wonderful event. You've got to come back from the Classic, and it's like, oh, we can't afford to. So it is going to, and I think now with the huge crowds you're getting at Le Mans for the 24 hour, it's probably going to be an easier one to get to, because I mean, I can't believe it when you think that the last time I went, I just sort of walked up to the gate on Wednesday and bought it and said, can I have a ticket for? Thank you very much. And they said to me, but of course, monsieur. And they handed it over, and I paid my €75 and I was there. You can't do that now. Apparently, it's basically sold out. if you don't have your ticket, if you don't have your tickets now, you're not getting in. So they're once again expecting a crowd well over 100,000 on race day.
Well, on 100,000 on race day. Yeah, the attendance in 2023 was 235,000.
Yeah, and it's such a bizarre because I mean it's such a huge thing, but it's funny how it all comes together because the first time that I went there, I thought, oh, this feels it felt like a state round. It felt there was just no big deal. It's like it's wonderful, but it just doesn't feel like a big event. And then suddenly at about 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, you could feel it just change, and suddenly like the stands filled up, and by the time the race started at 4 o'clock, the place everyone was packed in like sardines, and it was just it was like that for the whole 24 hours. Even at sort of 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, there were plenty of gaps around, but there were still so many people at the track as you wandered around at that time of the morning, and so many parties happening, and so many drunken Englishmen and Danes and all sorts of things. It is a fun event. Trust me, if you can get there, it is a fun event.
And the categories they've got there, like they've got 6 age-based categories, like based on the age of the cars, covering the history of Le Mans. Then you've got Group C, like the 6 categories before Group C, and then there's Group C. And there's the Porsche Classic race for Le Mans Porsches aged from 1965 to 1981. And then you've got endurance racing legends for the 1990s and 2000s.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic, and they also have a huge car show along with it as well. That people say is just incredible, and they do that for the Grand Prix de l'Arche d'Or. I mean, just the swap meet that they have, and all of the club. I mean, I could have come back if I'd have had the money. God, the amount of stuff I would have brought back. I mean, because you just walked along, even just finding old posters and old programs from being a Formula 5000 lover. It's like I wonder what this poster is. Oh, the Alton Park Gold Cup 1974 with and some of them were signed. And it was just my God, the stuff we could have. The first year
was made.
Sorry.
They continue. I was just going to say, incidentally, it was made mention when we were looking at the calendar that next year potentially Le Mans will be on the same weekend as the Grand Prix. It's actually happening this year.
Well, it always has. The thing is, it's at a different, because it's in Canada. It's at a different time zone, and it worked out because when we were every time we've been to Le Mans, and there's been that clash because if you remember, Lewis Hamilton won his first Grand Prix in Canada because it was huge news all over the French papers the next day. But we all sort of hung around because you filed your reports in the media centre, and as I mentioned that you had every desk had a television with a switch. One of the switches was broadcast as well, was Eurosport. And so you sat there, you did your stuff, and then you went and you went upstairs to the media bar, had a couple of drinks, had something to eat. Then we all wandered downstairs and watched the Canadian Grand Prix on the local feed in the media centre until sort of about 1 o'clock in the morning local time. So it was more than the Le Mans 24 hours for us. It was probably the Le Mans 48 hours. And boy, we felt and then I had to then I had to drive on the wrong side of the road all the way back up to Alençon, which is about an hour and a bit over an hour's drive. On the wrong side of the road and having not slept for 48 hours. How the hell we got back home, I have no idea. And I might have had the odd glass of champagne and a very nice glass of the Loire Valley rosé, which I've already got a bottle of for this weekend. Hey, listen, we better move out, otherwise, because the race will start by the time we finish this bloody show. The race will actually have started. So
And we'll miss the party.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Pete and I have got a party to go to tomorrow night, which has nothing to do with which has nothing to do with Le Mans, but we'll make it part of Le Mans, and I'm sure we'll talk motor racing there with
I've got a
the
party
other
on
people.
Saturday.
Oh, there you go. Well, you'll be ready to go. So make sure you've got that on. Make sure you've got Radio Le Mans. Take the earphone, take the earbuds for your phone, and tune into Radio Le Mans and listen. And by the way, if you are a hardcore motorsport fan and you really love the sport, please listen to the preparation on Radio Le Mans from about 7 o'clock Australian time, which always includes probably the most emotional half hour or so of motorsport you'll get all year, which is when they do their annual basically a memorial to the people we've lost since the last Le Mans in terms of, and they do all sorts of people along by legends of the sport. It's always incredibly emotional. Just yeah, and it's an amazing tradition, and how John gets through it every year, I've no idea, because a lot of these people are people that have been long time friends of him. There's also members of the Radio Le Mans family and all the rest of it who pass away. So it's very, very emotional, and it really is part of the lead up to Le Mans. And you'll get Paul Trustwell. It was great to hear Paul back again. Paul's had his huge battles with his own health, and you can tell that with his voice now. His voice has really gone there, but he's still a genius in terms of strategy. He knows more. He's forgotten more about endurance racing than any of us will ever know, and he stays up, or at least he has in the past. He stays up for the entire 24 hours and seldom, if ever, leaves the commentary position. Everybody else goes off and has a couple of hours break here and there. Trusses doesn't. He just sits there the whole time and does not move. And it's an incredible.
Well, a couple of times over the years, the race teams have taken advantage of that and employed Trustwell to do the race strategy for them. So it's
yeah, they're still doing it. He's basically made a business out of it late in life. I don't know how old Paul is. I mean, but he's certainly older than me. He came out to Bathurst one year, and I had a wonderful time at the Oxford Hotel. Just me, Christian, and Trusses just sitting down and having a very, very long chat with a couple of drinks. Or in my case, more than a couple of drinks, which was amazing. And he had so many stories, and just a lovely guy. And as I said, he has had some like a long battle with cancer, and but to hear him on the weekend was fabulous. So he'll definitely be there, and he'll be making his contribution. And he's one of these people who can sort of save 6 hours out. The car currently running in 7th place is a real chance of winning this, and will probably be. And sure enough, in the last 20 minutes or so, it's like, oh my God, where have they come from? Hang on, Trusses predicted this 3 hours ago or something.
He's probably the only man who predicted Mazda could have won in 1991.
Yeah, he's just he's a computer. He's better than a computer. He just goes through it. He uses a lot of technology, but he's got one of those amazing brains for statistics, and he can sit there and he can just do all sorts of things that make you that make you go aghast. Okay. Let's take that. We'll be here forever. So let's thank you everybody for joining us tonight. No time for the doctor.
Good luck, Matt Campbell.
Yeah, Matt Campbell, there's another Australian who's team, and probably the one who has the best chance of victory, along with a class victory for Yasha Shaheen. Unfortunately, James Allen, the Melbourne boy, despite winning last year in his class and winning at Daytona and winning in all sorts of places, hasn't got a drive this year, which I think is really sad, really unfortunate, because he's obviously a very good talent. So very disappointing that he lost that. Okay, everybody, we'll see you hopefully next hopefully next week. Pete, I'll see you tomorrow night. Mark, I'll see you next week. Enjoy Le Mans. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you. We'll catch you next week, everybody. Until then, see you later. Bye for now.
See you.